Hello, my fellow readers. Lazy Panda here. Apologies for the delay in video upload, and now on to today's book, Project Hail Mary. I'm more of a fantasy person than sci fi, to be honest, but every now and then comes a sci fi series that I wholeheartedly enjoy. Star Wars is a prime example of this. The movies are good and all, for the most part, but the universe and its many facets I find quite intriguing. Similarly, Murderbot Diaries is another sci fi series I have enjoyed recently. But these are generally under the category of soft sci-fi series, where if you can imagine it, you can do anything via a new sci-fi thing. But there's another branch of sci-fi that I've grown to appreciate more and more over the years. That's hard sci-fi, where you are writing a sci-fi story but within the confines of a real science for the most part. Now, my introduction to this subgenre was by The Martian by the author Andy Weir. I watched the movie, enjoyed it immensely, then read the book and enjoyed it even more. And I recently completed another one of his book, Project Hail Mary. Now, quick synopsis to anyone unfamiliar with the plot, despite this book being already released for 5 years, yet watching the book review about. Now, quick synopsis for anyone unfamiliar with the series. Ryland Grace is a sole survivor of a desperate last chance mission, and if he fails, Earth and humanity will perish. Except right now, he doesn't know that. He can't even remember his own name, let alone the nature of his assignment and how to complete it. All he knows that he has been asleep for a very, very long time, and he has just awakened to find himself millions of miles away from home and with nothing but two corpses to company. His crewmates dead, his memory fuzzily returning, Ryland realizes the impossible task that now confronts him. Hurling through the space in a tiny ship, now it is up to him to puzzle out the impossible scientific mystery and conquer the extinction level threat that our species now face. And with the clock ticking down, the nearest human being light years away, he has got to do it all alone. Or does he? It was as brilliant and awesome as I have imagined, and it surpassed my expectation even more. If anyone watching has yet to read it, stop watching this, read it before continuing. It was an awesome book that tells a story of extinction level crisis, first contact, and somehow explores human psyche as well as complex scientific topics such as relativity and facets of space travel. In short, it's an awesome book. I loved it, already read it 3 times, and will be revisiting it again. Now, this book is hard to talk about without spoilers, to be honest, so consider a big spoiler warning. I'll try to keep it as spoiler free as possible, but already consider this as a spoiler warning. But just before we continue, if you want to give yourself a treat, read this book and enjoy it immensely. Now, to my fellow readers or anyone who doesn't care about being spoiled, sun is dimming, caused by an space algae known as astrophage. This could and would lead to human extinction if no solution is found within 30 years. But it is not only our sun that is dimming, but every star within our cluster is getting dimmed, with the sole exception of Tau Ceti around 12 light years away. Ryland is in a spaceship making his way toward Tau Ceti to find out why it is not dimming and how we can do the same to save humans from extinction. Now, at the start of the book, Rylands find himself in a confined space with retrograde amnesia and two dead bodies. He has no idea who he is, where he is, or why he is there. Now, I usually hate amnesia in stories, but here it has been used as a stylistic choice. According to an interview, Andy Weir decided to use this approach because he wanted to balance in terms of character interaction, as if we are to follow the events chronologically. At least after a third of the book, most of it will be Rocky and Ryland's interaction only. Now, also the way amnesia has been introduced and handled is very great. Not only it gives the reason why Ryland is suffering from amnesia, but how it was almost necessary and crucial for the mission. Post which we follow his line of thinking about finding out where he is, along with some minor scientific experiments. He figures out he is in a spaceship. After getting access to the control room in a spaceship, he finds out that he is not in our solar system anymore, but in another star system entirely. He is light years away from home and no idea why. Just when he finally realized the details, and why he's there, we are introduced to Rocky. Rocky is an extraterrestrial entity from a planet Erid around 10 light years away from our solar system, and from the very first planet in its solar system. And now, my personal favorite character of Project Hail Mary, along with someone we'll talk about in a bit. Now, we can decide this as three stories happening simultaneously from a reader's perspective. Sun is dimming and humans are taking action until the launch of Project Hail Mary. The adventures of Tau Ceti and our first contact, and finally solving of the issue of astrophage, which is easier said than done. Apart from the prep work of Hail Mary, more or less human actions can be summed up as drinking poison to quench one's thirst now and worry about poison later. Now, the question is, how long can we drink a poison before poison itself becomes a prevalent issue than the thirst? Humans need to deliberately cause environmental damage to save ourselves from dimming of the sun, to use greenhouse effects to keep us warm. But what is to happen after this is resolved? Also, it is not a sustainable solution. This cannot be done indefinitely and only can be used a certain number of times. Now, for the another section of the story, Adventures in Tau Ceti System, story is mainly a first contact story. Astrophage doesn't count, okay, before anyone comes at me with their pitchforks. First contact with sentient life form. I think that sounds better. Now, a quick nitpick most readers from what I heard about this section is how quickly Ryland and Rocky are able to overcome their language barrier. Well, Rocky has, let's just say, photographic memory, for a lack of a better term, and Ryland's case is slightly different. Consider this, he is stuck in a space with very little stimulus for his senses. Most of his audio stimulus is coming from being stuck with Rocky. So it is eventual that he'll pick up words and everything. So that solves that issue. Now, during the first read through, I was like, can we get to the problem? We have 2 planets to save now. But during my subsequent read through, I found it much more engaging because, let's be honest, communication needs to be sorted out before they can try to come up for a solution for their shared problem of astrophage. Now, third section can be summed up as trying to find the solution for the main problem of astrophage and getting it delivered to their respective homeworlds to save Earth and Erid. This consists mainly of the second half of the book. It includes hypothesizing over the possible predator of astrophage, daring plan to get a sample, less than ideal and safe escape from Project Iridian from Tau Ceti system, and after collecting the sample and both almost dying, this was so tense that I cannot possibly do it justice in words, to be honest, and the subsequent problem of trying to tackle despite already being summoned by a lot of issues. How it is they say? Life is just one damn thing after another. That is wrong. These things overlap. Now, the best thing was getting to see how these two persevere through all and coming out alive and saving both worlds. It is nothing short of a feat of luck, stubbornness, and hard and smart work. I am intentionally not mentioning any major spoilers for this section, partly because I will not be able to do it justice, and rest I still want to any reader who has yet to pick up the book, I still want them to enjoy it. Now, coming to the spoilers, proper spoilers, including characters, let's start with my personal favorite of the two, Eva Stratt, a single-minded woman given more power than anyone in the history of mankind, on the guarantee that she will see the deployment of Project Hail Mary to save humanity, and my personal favorite character tied with Rocky. Ryland is a good character in his own right, but just by a teeny tiny margin, I like Rocky and Stratt more. I find the moments with her to be much more interesting and needed for the story. When she was deliberating over whether or not to send astronauts as awake and cause psychological damage to them, or send them in a coma with tech that has not been tested yet, but with a good chance. When she decided to take the blood test to see whether she was a positive for the gene marker to be coma resistant and safe for the travel, she graduated from a single-minded individual with authority to a likable character. Then she continues to impress. When she mentions that once Project Hail Mary is launched, she'll most likely be going to prison. She knew what she was doing, what the implications will be, and what the actions await her post the deployment of Project Hail Mary. Now, during her final two appearances, she went from good to a great character, showing vulnerability and human side of her personality during the course of the story, and this was much more needed to round up her character. Despite her abuse of authority and strict demeanor, she was a human after all, and she knew what she had to do, but it does not make it easy for her to make those decisions. Now, coming back to Rocky, he was interesting in a different light. First of all, love that he is not just a humanoid alien like we have encountered in most sci fi shows and movies, or media in general, to be honest. He was very different physically, and extensive details have been provided on how his species can exist in given confines of what we know about his home planet. Also, love how mentioning if there is any difference between how human and Iridians work, they just push it down to cultural thing. It was also a breath of fresh air to see how technologically comparable both humans and Iridians were. We are better at advanced science like relativity and etc., but Iridians have better material technology. Now, Rocky is an engineer, sole survivor of his crew of 23 toward his journey to the Tau Ceti, and is an immediately likable character. He's earnest and can be considered an optimist in the best way possible. I like that despite how bleak the situation is, he was a ray of hope in every interaction. During their escape of Iridian, the planet where Astrophage was going to breed in Tau Ceti system, when Rocky almost sacrificed himself to save Ryland, I had to stop for a solid 5 minutes and think that he better be alive or I might drop the book entirely, which is rare for me. And when he recovered, I was like, okay, I can take a sigh of relief now. But he was much more than an optimist. He was a voice of reason. We saw how good the decisions Ryland make without Rocky, and Rocky insisted of having and Rocky insisted on having Ryland sleep because he know how stupid humans decision make when we are sleep deprived. Now, coming to Ryland, he was a great character in his own right, and his reactions would be just like how real humans react to the things. Now, I wanted to discuss this after Rocky and Strat for the sole reason because he is our main character. We follow him throughout all his interactions with both characters and see how he grows over the time with such interaction. Seeing, and not only that, we also see how things progress from the initial contact up until this point. For example, investigating astrophage, learning about its machination, cultivating astrophage, which we are going to be using as fuel for Hail Mary, creation of Hail Mary, creation of spin drive to propel the craft, etc. All the steps and mistakes that we made through the journey were logical and not any intervention of external force, but all that something can happen. We see humans tackling each of these issues as one. I guess extinction can finally force humans to work together. Maybe I am an optimist after all. I like Dimitri and his interactions with Ryland. Seeing his character explode through these interactions was a smart way to warm up to the character, which speak volumes of his action that he does later in the series. Now, what set Rylands apart from most Gary Sue and are his outlook and actions. He makes mistakes, he gets injured, he makes stupid mistakes when he is sleep deprived, and he is sleep deprived a lot. But the most human moment that makes him appealing is when he rejects getting on the Project Hail Mary. His actions at the near ending to go save Rocky is both selfless and selfish in equal amount. Shows his great character growth from coward to risking his own life to save his possibly only friend. I saw some reviews complaining about lack of deep characters in the story, but there is one thing that we need to consider. Based on how the story flows or driven, we can broadly say that stories are either character driven or narrative driven. Quick example of a character driven story is Frankenstein. The main story deals with the idea of how far is too far for curiosity. Victor Frankenstein being obsessed with the idea of new life creation and how it impacts not only him but those around him. We get to experience the story from three different POVs throughout the journey. and each one a great character in their own right. By the end of the story, you are aware of what choices the characters have made throughout their journey, but we have not received any confirmation whether it was the right choice or not. We are left to make our own decision, like who was right, Victor or the monster, as Adam as he calls himself, or simply the character given in a situation, how they will deal with the situation and the choices and consequences. Now, narrative driven approach is slightly different. It is where a story is mainly driven by events taking place around them and more not through and characters are mainly forced to do the reaction in these situations. A good example that I can think of is Resident Evil 2. Claire Redfield and Leon Kennedy are traveling to Raccoon City for their own reasons, but are stuck in a particular situation, aka zombie outbreak, and subsequent fall of Raccoon City. They are just trying to survive the Raccoon City and escape from it. These are the types of story that are mainly driven by the events happening and characters' reaction being forced into such situation. Sorry about the long tangent, but the main point being, Project Hail Mary is more of a narrative driven as compared to a character driven. I don't mean that we don't see character development. Let's take Ryland for consideration. From the very beginning of the story, we found out that he left research community because people did not like his research. Then he takes Strat's offer just to prove himself to those who have refuted him earlier. Then he decided to continue working for her just to make a safe environment and future for his students, or his children as he calls them. Then he is willing to sacrifice someone to save Earth but refuses to do it himself when push comes to shove. He then gets amnesia and decided to do what's best and try to save Erit and Earth. As Strat said, you are fundamentally a good man. Even after realization that he was sent here against his will, he continued to work on to solve the astrophage issue. By the end, he can return to Earth as a hero no less, but he decided to give up his safety to go save his only friend. Now, also some of the comments I saw about book that how they did not like the ending, but I think it was a perfect ending for Ryland Grace. He gets to do what he does best, to teach, even if it is not in the way that we have imagined. Now, next time we'll see what book we need to cover. If you have any recommendation, do provide them in comments. Until next time, my fellow readers.